Hillbilly Joe, your favorite storyteller. This is the second episode in Expat Stories from Around the World, a new playlist that I started about a week ago, where I'm going to reveal stories of expats that I've met on my travels. And I think a lot of these stories are just amazing, they're interesting, and they could inspire you if you're a writer or creative person. You might take this as input. Please credit me for inspiration or inspired by these stories. So this is a story, and again, I'm using just the generic name Mike for all of these characters that I've met to protect the innocent. So I meet this guy at a hotel who I'm a friend of the guy at the hotel. He invited me over because there was an American there who needed some help with his phone, and he wanted some advice on phone plans, stuff like that. So I stopped by and I met this guy, and so to me he sounded like Charlie Rose. And as you know, Charlie Rose is from North Carolina, so he sounded like a guy from North Carolina. And I remember asking him, "Hey man, are you from North Carolina?" And he was like, "Oh, a little bit chagrined," and he was like, "No, I'm from Florida." I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm just saying, that was sort of the end of the conversation." Later on, the hotel proprietor contacted me and said, "Hey, that guy that you met, he wants to stay in Krakow for a longer time. Do you know of any apartments?" He's looking to rent an apartment. I hate to see him go because he's been staying in my hotel for over a month, and obviously filling a room at a hotel, it's very important. So, but he knows that come on, it's kind of would make more sense for him to get an apartment and pay basically less than half of what he's paying at the hotel. And I was like, "Yeah, my place is available. I'm not sure if I'm going to be going to medical school in Krakow or in Warsaw, or actually no, Krakow or Poznan, because I applied to both places, and I'm heading back to the U.S. for 2 months to do some pre-med requirements that I didn't have as an engineer." So I met with him again, showed him the apartment, and he liked it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll take it right away." And I was like, "All right, cool. So can I leave my stuff here?" And he was like, "Yeah, you can leave your stuff." So I left my stuff in one of the rooms because I was going back to the U.S. to do some pre-med stuff over the summer. And I took, in fact, 20 credit hours in 2 6-week summer sessions, which is really, a lot of stuff. So anyways, I come back. He's letting me actually stay in the apartment that I rented to him. I let him take over, actually. And one of the rooms, there was 2 bedrooms apartment, and he let me stay in one of the rooms. He's really, really gracious guy. So really get down to the bottom, more of the story is, so he claims, I was like, "How did you get here to Krakow?" And he claims that he was working for the State Department, and he had a globe in the office. He spun the globe, put his finger on the map, and Krakow popped up, and he's like, "All right, I'm going to Krakow." Which, of course, sounds like a BS story, but who knows? That was his story. So by the time I get back, he already is essentially dating a 19-year-old. Oh, by the way, I asked him how old he was. This is an older man, and he said he was 48. And I was like, "Dude, that is just bullshit, man." And in fact, the guy was in his early 60s, or definitely late 50s. Let's say he was 60. But he was in excellent shape. You could see he'd be constantly working out. Even though he was an older person, he was working out. He had a military background, always had like a military haircut. And he was just a really cool guy. So being that I'm staying with him, staying in his apartment, we'd hang out. I'd hang out with my girlfriend and his girlfriend, and we became sort of basically drinking buddies during my first year of medical school, which wasn't a good idea. But anyhow, he came up with all of these stories, and I just want to relate this one thing to you because it kind of bothered me at first. He would tell these stories about supposedly his heroics in combat and all these different things, and a lot of times he was drunk, and a lot of times the stories that he was telling me were like, they were movie plots. Like one of the stories was he was in Vietnam, and his whole squad got ambushed by the VC, and it was just him and Johnson, this black guy named Johnson. And Johnson couldn't see, but Johnson could walk. whereas he couldn't walk, but he could see. So they crawled to each other, and Johnson got on the back of this guy Mike and guided him. So what if I got it wrong? So this guy Mike says that he could see, but he couldn't walk. The other guy could walk but couldn't see, and they returned back to the base, and just as he was getting to the base, he and Johnson got shot up, and Johnson, of course, died. And I was like, dude, that was from the movie Love is Like a Box of Chocolates, right? That was Forrest Gump. That was one of the stories in Forrest Gump. It was Forrest Gump and Bubba. He just changed the names of the characters, right? But I just didn't have the heart to say, dude, you're totally busted. That's Forrest Gump, man. What the hell are you talking about? But I just let it go. I just let it go and just enjoyed some of the stories. And I want to emphasize this. Listen, if somebody is your drinking buddy and they're doing this false valor stuff, whether it's true or not, you don't know. You may never know for sure. Look, if he's just your drinking buddy, who the hell cares? You're just telling stories, having fun, yucking it up, right? Obviously, if this person wants to go into business with you, be a business partner, or let's say marry your daughter or something like that, that's a different story. That is a totally different story. Then you need to really break out the magnifying glass and look into these stories. Do not let that slide, because that it bothered me for a while. And when I returned to DC, I talked to some people, asked if they would do some research for me, and they just said, listen, if he's just a drinking buddy, let it go. Just enjoy the stories, and the guy's probably lying, or maybe he's half lying. Who cares? You know what I mean? Just whatever. So that's just some advice to you as an aside of the story. But what I want to tell you is what's interesting about this guy is he never told me about his family, right? You had to assume, like, man, you're in your 60s, gotta have been married, you gotta have some kids or something, probably. I mean, you're not a messed up guy. You're definitely not a MGTOW, as far as I could tell. And slowly over time, I got a few tidbits of information what he wanted to share, but he kind of said that he was married and he had a son who was a doctor, and one of his other kids died, and he was divorced. That was really all he told me. And I just let it go. I mean, I was like, you know what? You don't want to tell me? I don't really care. Whatever. But he was very manipulative in many ways. He knew how to manipulate people, and he would say certain things like, Joe, you're my only friend in all the whole world. You're my best friend in the whole world, kind of stuff. And you're like, I mean, that sounds pretty desperate, bro. I mean, I'm your best friend. I'm your only friend. He would mention certain people's names, like, I don't know. And that, oh, my really good friend, he just died. Or whatever, he'd say something like that. I mean, whatever. Anyhow, we did celebrate his birthday and discovered that he was at least 65. And then, obviously, the guy's not 48, 50. The dude's, say he was 65, 5 years or so later. But look, we had a really good relationship, really good friendship, I would say. But he had his serious problems. The guy was a serious smoker, probably smoked a pack and a half, maybe 2 packs a day, and he drank a lot. Now, honestly speaking, he had a lot of, let's say, pain issues, whether they be mental or physical or a combination. Not really sure. He was self-medicating. He had all kinds of different kind of medications. Not all kinds. He had a couple of things. He wanted perks. And I was like, dude, I'm not getting you any Percocets. Come on. This is a Class A pharmaceutical. They're not readily available in Poland. I'm definitely not going to access any of my medical resources in the U.S. for you. This is bogus. Look, So he would switch to beer and vodka. He told me his story. He went to a Polish doctor, and he asked, "Listen, I got this pain," and the doctor was like, "Listen, we don't have that kind of medication here available. except for the most severe cases, and you're not a severe case. And he's like, Doc, how do you guys deal with the pain? The doctor said vodka. So this dude started drinking vodka. And, a couple times we saw him at the bottom of the staircase. He pissed his pants. He was drunk, stumbling all over himself. A couple times we'd go out. I mean, this guy would put that beer away. If we drank beer, I mean, he would drink, my God, 5, 6, 7. One time a guy said he drank 9 half-liters of Polish beer in one sitting. And then when he got up a couple times to use the bathroom, but on the way out, he just couldn't walk. The guy couldn't walk. He was totally drunk. But the story gets better, and here's the amazing, crazy reveal, is that after, now did I tell you he had a 19-year-old girlfriend? Yeah, so when I came back after the summer of my pre-med classes, he was pretty much living with this 19-year-old girl student and basically sponsoring her. I mean, look, you could argue, look, it's not for me to decide whether she loved him or not, whether it was just a relationship of convenience, whether he was a sugar daddy. I don't care. I don't know. But on the surface, at least, there was definitely an affection there. She was very much liking this guy. And look, could it have been an act? Was she just an actress? I mean, she was a beautiful girl. And this guy was older, but like I said, he was in good shape. He had a rugged face, like a jaw chiseled out of granite, that kind of a face, right? And he was really an interesting person. Fun, a lot of stories, a lot of information. He'd been in a lot of countries and a lot of, so he could talk to you. He could talk about almost anything. And so that's maybe what attracted her to him. He was like a tall Yoda, perhaps. So he's with this 19-year-old, and then of course she is about to finish her university studies 5-6 years later. It's 5 years later. And I had then finished my studies. I'd returned to the U.S. and I was back in Warsaw. I was in Warsaw now working when he had a stroke. I remember his girlfriend calling me saying if I could help. And I'm like, I'm in Warsaw. I mean, there's nothing I can do. I'm not next of kin. So one of the neighbors in the building in Krakow, who I also knew, he started doing some internet research, just Googling the name, locations where he knew that had talked about where he had lived, where he might have family. Had this talk that said that he had a Russian wife, that he had married a Russian woman, but as soon as she got citizenship, she divorced him or left him or whatever. But he could technically be still legally married to this Russian woman. So I'm not really sure about that, but he claims that the friend claims that he contacted this person who said she knew Mike and then immediately said, "Don't call me again," and hung up the phone. So that was not so good. But he then contacted some other people and found out that he had some daughters plural, and 3 of his daughters came to Krakow to help Mike basically pack up and return to the U.S. because he had a tumor. They thought he had a tumor or a stroke, and the medical people here wouldn't help him or couldn't help him. I don't know if it was insurance issues or what. He had he had really good insurance, but maybe it wasn't, I don't know. They thought he was going to die. So the story is that these 3 sisters tell my friend what the real truth is, that the scars on Mike's face was not from combat. It was from bar fights. That this was a guy who liked to go out, get drunk, get into bar fights, and that's why his face was all messed up with the scars and such and such. And I don't know if they talked about any of his bullet wounds. I didn't see any bullet holes, but apparently he may have had some lacerations or bullet holes or whatever. Who knows? So the daughters come, 3 of these daughters, and only 2 of them are, 100% biological. Some of them are half daughters or half sisters. They're half sisters, yeah. So they have the same father but different mothers. And they reveal that Mike, when he was 14, he might have gotten a girl pregnant or something like that. And as soon as he was eligible or as soon as he was able, he wanted to get out of that situation so bad he joined the Marines and went to Vietnam. He did 3 tours of Vietnam, and after that, he got a job at the State Department and security, and a security officer or whatever, and traveled different places, but also spent 20 years, I guess, in Florida. That was part of the story that he said he was from Florida, not North Carolina. But and during the course of his military career, whatever, he had impregnated at least 6 women and had 12 kids. So he had gotten a couple of girls pregnant in Vietnam, at least 1 or 2 girls pregnant in Korea, at least 1 or 2 girls pregnant in Japan. So he had all of these Amerasian daughters and sons basically all over the planet. And then he did marry an American woman, and that's where he was when he was in Florida for 20 years. He was married for 20 years, supposedly, and he had at least 1 or 2 daughters from that relationship. And so, as you can imagine, when the 19-year-old, who's now probably 25, discovered all of this, she didn't want anything to do with this guy anymore. She didn't want anything to do with this guy anymore. And, of course, the prognosis was bleak that he wouldn't survive. Returns to the United States for medical care. And 3 months later, as if you call it a miracle, whatever, turns out he did not have a tumor. He just had a stroke. He had a stroke and he passed out. And he came back. You could tell he had a little bit of physical issues, He never 100% went away, but he got better with time. And he just, unfortunately, got into another relationship with another girl who was a true gold digger. The first one might or might not have been, but the second girl, 100% for sure was. And she was basically using him for a free place to live. And there was only 1 bed in the apartment, so apparently they slept in the same bed, but who knows? If anything after that was going on, have no idea, don't even care. But what happens is that after about 3 years of this behavior, the son who was a doctor was really actually his son-in-law. One of his son-in-laws came and said, "Pop, you can't stay here anymore. You're an alcoholic. You're not. You need medical care. Come back to the U.S. Stay with us." And that's what he did. I didn't even know he left. I just found out sort of I don't know what a mutual friend told me that he was gone, and when I contacted him, I think I did get a chance to say, no, I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to him. He just sort of disappeared. But our relationship kind of petered out. I would say petered out when his new girlfriend and my girlfriend at the time were, kind of hanging out. My girlfriend didn't really want to hang out with this girl because she thought she was weird, and she was weird. As I said, she was a true gold digger, and very jealous of my girlfriend. And then my friend, this guy Mike, started insinuating that my girlfriend was screwing around. And when I pushed him on any kind of actionable intelligence, really, what did he really know? What's going on? It turns out it was just all coming from his girlfriend, who was jealous of my girlfriend and was just making up stuff. So after that, it was just, hanging out with this guy. A couple times, for instance, I was walking in the city. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. I'm with one of my sons. 10 o'clock in the morning. And he's sitting there drinking. What was he drinking? Whiskey sours gin and tonics. He was drinking gin and tonics. He asked me hey, come join me, sit at my table. Hey, whatever you want, Joe, it's on me. I'm like, okay, whatever. I was actually going out to get some scrambled eggs, some yaitsnitsa. And so I had some yaitsnitsa and some coffee. and he's offering me, do you want to have a beer? I'm like, dude, it's 10:15. It's 10:15 in the morning, man. Who the hell drinks beer 10? I mean, it's not even. I mean, I understand if it was a hot summer day. I mean, that may be refreshing, but it was like in the fall. I mean, I'm wearing a warm winter coat, or maybe it was early spring. It was definitely not, 10 a.m. beer time. That's what I can tell you. That I can tell you. So, yeah, so we didn't really get a chance to say goodbye to him. He just sort of was whisked away. And I did see him, I should say, on Facebook. And of course, he had a picture of himself from 30 years ago. I tried to friend him, and he never replied. So I don't know if he's actually on Facebook or not. I don't really care. I'm not on Facebook. You won't find me on Facebook. But so that is the story of this guy. Came to Poland in his 60s. Rugged looking guy. I mean, I don't know if you can call him ugly, but he just looked, rugged, right? With scars, and hooks up with a beautiful girl, has a great life for about 6 years, but just like, it was almost like drinking himself to death. And eventually he was forced to return to the United States. I don't know what's happened to him since. I can't say that I don't care. I do care. I wish I knew what's going on. Hope he's healthy. Hope he's doing okay. But imagine that. Hanging out with a dude who had 12 kids from 6 different women. And he never told you. Right? He never told you the real deal. So this has been Expat Stories from Around the World. I'm your host, Holy Joe Rock and Roll. And I have a whole bag of these stories that I want to reveal as we go. And I hope you'll stay subscribed, because I think they're interesting. And they tell a lot about the people you meet when you're traveling. Take care.